You're watching F1 2022 Technical Analysis, brought to you by Aramco. We're going to have a lot of crashes. Very risky. No driver wants it. Those are just a few of the warnings Formula 1 drivers have given about planned rule changes for 2023 and 2024. Changes that could have a dramatic impact on the way races play out on track and on the pit wall. Formula 1 drivers complaining is far from unusual, moaning is part of the job description. But when it comes to safety, it's usually wise to listen to them, as it's their necks and all other parts of their bodies on the line when things go wrong. That's why their gripes have had an immediate effect on a rule change planned for next season that is set to be abandoned. And that's a warning for the potential threat to the game-changing plan to ban tyre blankets entirely in 2024 that could change the way F1 races play out dramatically. The motivation for the tyre blanket ban in 2024 is the FIA and Formula 1's desire to reduce the energy consumed to power them, as well as saving costs. But it could also have a big impact on the racing. We've become very familiar with the power of the undercut in F1 today. Ever since F1 banned refuelling in 2010 and then introduced high degradation Pirelli tyres the following year, strategy in dry conditions has usually been based upon the pace advantage gained by pitting a lap before arrival for fresh tyres and overtaking them when they pit. It's not always the case, but that's been the story of the majority of races in this era. But that only works if you can get your fresh tyres up to temperature almost immediately, which makes tyre blankets essential. There's every chance that with tyre blankets banned, a car on an old but up to temperature set of tyres could be quicker than the one on an outlap on fresh rubber. As Pirelli Motorsport boss Mario Isola suggests, this could make the overcut more powerful and transform F1 strategic orthodoxy. What could also happen is that there is greater variety in strategy. A longer tyre warm-up period, which could potentially last several laps, means that variations between cars will be more pronounced. You could see epic battles between cars that excel in such conditions, and those that are perhaps stronger later in stints, creating a powerful variable to create good racing. And with every track putting different levels of energy into the tyres depending on the configuration, things could change dramatically from circuit to circuit. And most enticingly, we'll see drivers on low grip rubber sliding the cars around with the ability to produce fast outlaps, an essential skill, much as we see in IndyCar where tyre warmers are banned. Sounds great, doesn't it? And it could be, but drivers and teams are concerned that this tyre nirvana might not be achievable, meaning that it could have the opposite impact and actually make the racing worse. The driver complaints stem from the tyre test conducted during FP2 at the United States Grand Prix. There, drivers ran the 2023 prototype tyres. Not only are the 2023 Pirellis designed to tackle the understeer balance of the 2022 rubber by producing a more grippy front tyre thanks to an improved contact patch, but they have also been conceived to work with the reduced blanket temperatures. This is thanks to the interim steps being taken in 2022 and 23 as Pirelli works towards the blanket ban. For the introduction of the low-profile tyres running on 18-inch wheel rims this year, that dropped to 70 degrees front and rear. The reduction to 50 degrees was planned for next year. But during the Austin test, drivers found it difficult to warm up the tyres, which required 3 to 4 laps of running before they provided grip and led to plenty of leery moments. As McLaren driver Lando Norris pointed out, Austin provided the ideal conditions for such a test, and there were still big problems. He suggested that everyone's going to shunt the car at some point for a change no driver wants. Norris was not alone. Alfa Romeo driver Valtteri Bottas insisted he's not against the principle of the change, but only if the tyres can cope with that. During the Austin test, he said they couldn't. And it wasn't just the drivers who highlighted the problem. As Williams head of vehicle performance Dave Robson pointed out, F1 cars are optimised to the nth degree in every way, which means they have evolved to work in an environment that allows higher tyre blanket temperatures. As he put it, the Austin test showed the consequence of the drop to 50 degrees for cars that simply are not designed to work with such low levels of grip on cold tyres. Now, we know tyres might not be the sexiest of topics, but here at the race we believe in covering what really matters on track in F1. After all, the tyres connect the car to the ground and have been deciding Grand Prix winners and losers for more than a century. So if you are the kind of F1 fan who wants to know not just what is happening, but why, like this video and subscribe to our channel, as it really does help us do what we do. So as a response to the Austin tyre test troubles and driver complaints, the 50-degree blanket temperature is now set to be dropped for 2023. But with a difference. Pirelli proposed that for the Mexico tyre test, the tyre blankets only be allowed to run at 70 degrees for 2 hours, rather than the 3 that is currently permitted. After meeting with drivers in Mexico, Pirelli now expects this change to go ahead for next year, as do the teams. As Alpine sporting director Alain Permain argued, it seems like a good compromise. So that's the immediate problem solved, but there's a much bigger one looming for 2024.
Progress is a race that has no end. After every finish line, another challenge awaits. How can Aramco continue to push innovation in a sport at the forefront of technology? This is how. Discover how Aramco and the Aston Martin Formula One team aim to meet Formula One's sustainable fuel targets. Aramco, powered by How.
To be clear, the tyre blanket ban for 2024 is still on, provided suitable rubber is developed. You could argue that Pirelli's struggle to produce 2023 tyres that provide suitable warm-up characteristics for 50-degree blankets means it won't be able to produce tyres that work without any preheating at all, but that's not a fair conclusion. The 2023 tyres are a relatively minor evolution of the 2022 Pirellis, but for 2024, Pirelli will create a brand new line of tyres that will be completely different owing to the demands of running without blankets. These tyres must have a far wider temperature working range than the current rubber, stretching from say 20 degrees initially up to 120 or 130 degrees Celsius. That means an enormous range of tyre pressure. And they need to warm up quickly from low temperatures without then overheating at high temperatures. Given the anticipated lengthy warm-up period, it's no surprise that many drivers have questioned the wisdom of the tyre blanket ban, including Max Verstappen, who predicts a lot of crashes. Kevin Magnussen was another critical voice, calling the tyre blanket ban for 2024 a safety concern and questioning whether Pirelli, the FIA and Formula One understand just how difficult it is to warm up the tyres. There could also be pushback from teams given the changes that might need to be made to the cars to ensure they work the tyres better during the warm-up phase. After all, tyre blankets have been a fact of life in F1 since the mid-1980s, so that has influenced the evolution of the cars. Plus, there's also the difficulty of producing the tyres in the first place. As Mercedes trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin put it, the challenge of making a blanketless tyre is incredibly difficult. Not only that, but it could also have a negative impact on the racing, given the likely need to manage overheating and therefore not push hard. But right now, this is all hypothetical. Nobody has tried a 2024 Pirelli F1 tyre on track because the testing programme doesn't start until next year. It's likely to kick off at Jerez in February. The on-track running will be critical. Pirelli had to develop the 2022 18-inch tyres with limited mileage using mule cars that weren't an accurate simulation of the 2022 spec F1 cars. While the 2022 and 23 cars will be similar to the 24 machines, Pirelli has always struggled to get the testing mileage with relevant F1 cars it requires. In order to bolster its testing programme, Pirelli has evaluated using Formula 2 machinery or Japanese Super Formula cars. But despite being high-performance machines, they are still a long way off the demands of F1 cars. That means it needs significant mileage with current F1 cars across a range of teams and circuit characteristics to develop its 2024 blanketless tyres. And with the clock counting down to 2024 and the teams and drivers putting on the pressure, time is short. Even with significant experience from other racing categories, including Formula 2 with blanketless tyres, Pirelli faces a big challenge. It's not impossible to make F1 tyres that work without blankets, but it is very difficult. And given the reaction to the 2023 tyre test using 50-degree tyre blankets, you can only imagine how forceful the pushback from teams will be. While F1 is set on going through with it, it's no foregone conclusion that a rule change that could have a game-changing impact on the racing, for better or worse, won't be postponed or even abandoned entirely. But you can be sure that this isn't the last we're going to hear from drivers about the safety of the tyre blanket ban.
Thanks for watching F1 2022 Technical Analysis, brought to you by Aramco.